Good morning, Judge New and Commissioners. We're just going to give you a little update on the Rockwall County Thoroughfare Plan update. So
Tell us your name for the record.
Brian Crooks with Freese and Nichols. I'm the project manager.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Right now, in the plan development timeline, we're about a quarter of the way through the timeline, and we're about 35% our way through the study. The initial sort of batch of work is all the kind of the heavy lifting, where we do a kickoff meeting with Erica and the county. We talk to you. We had our stakeholders meetings and our public input. Now we're going to take all that information and start coding up the model networks to assess the impact of proposed improvements, as well as starting to mark up the new thoroughfare plan, and as well as looking at some kind of policy recommendations, which will be a component of that. Whoops, I'm sorry. So our engagement efforts, we had our project steering committee in March. We had our stakeholder interviews at the end of March, as well as our town halls in Rockwall and Fate on March 31st and April 1st. And then we're still having our online survey, which is due to be completed on May 10th. We noticed, just as a sidebar, we noticed the Rockwall really had a lot of good conversations that was very well attended. The Fate public hearing wasn't as well attended, but we still had very, very, very good comments. So that was a really, really positive experience. In terms of survey results, as of yesterday, we had 570 participants and over 800 responses, and compared to the strategic plan that had 550 participants and over 1,100 responses. So we're getting good participation, and it looks like the idea to extend the survey was a good idea. We're getting more responses. So I give kudos to the Commissioners Court for pushing that idea. In terms of accessing the survey, most of our responses came via Facebook, although we did have a really good response rate with the QR code, so that was very encouraging. And we did have some responses from the county website as well. In terms of key issues and needs, this is just the draft map. We're going to be working on it, kind of trying to clean it up a bit. The general issues, which is well known by the Commissioners Courts, is just the general lack of capacity across the network, both north, south, and east, west within the county, as well as across the lake. This creates congestion and safety issues, as well as there's a perceived over-reliance on SH-205 as a mobility corridor. That's largely because it's just a really good corridor. In terms of key needs, it comes down to, is just coming down to widening and looking at providing additional connectivity across the network, as well as preserving right-of-way. Another issue that we do notice and that everybody's well aware of is basically the process of developing roadway improvements really can't keep up with proposed growth. And so that's part of the reasons why we're having some of the things that we're seeing today on the network. We also did a pretty comprehensive review of all the existing and planned roadway projects within the county, and this is the map. So we've been using this map to update the model networks, and that will be used moving forward to assess the capacity and demand in coordination with the demographic update, which Connor will quickly come up and talk about the demographic component of the update.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, Judge, thank you for having us this morning. Connor Roberts with Freese and Nichols. So my involvement in the plan is really on the demographic side. So our urban planning team takes a look at available data, sort of comes up with an approach. So you hear Brian talk about modeling, right? And a big component of the plan is running the model. Well, the model has to be based off of some sort of assumption, right, as it relates to demographics. And so there are really two categories here. We talk population and we talk employment. Of course, COG has their baseline assumption. They have their 2036 projection and their 2050 projection. As part of this process, what we've done is taken their geographies and have quite literally gone to aerials, gone to our municipal plans, and looked at what is a realistic development scenario in vacant property. So with that in mind, you'll see here on the top line that we're sort of getting to the ultimate same conclusion as COG as it relates to the population within the county. Now, how we get there is how we differ a little bit. So we're a higher metric here on our 2036 adjusted rate as compared to COG. Essentially what we're saying is based off of entitlement, sort of seeing that population increase quicker, but then level out as we get to 2050, whereas COG is sort of taking a little bit more of a linear approach. Of course, as part of this process, we're taking a look at surrounding TAZs, traffic analysis zones, to see if there are any projects adjacent to the county that would impact. And of course, taking a look there at those combined metrics, seeing that we're relatively similar in our adjusted metric compared to COG for employment, or for population rather.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, please, Commissioner.
Connor, so if I'm understanding you correctly, in 2036, COG says our county will have a population of 169,608.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And your group has concluded it'll actually be 193,374, which is, I guess, about a 10%, 12% increase, but which is a significant number if you're saying we're going to add another 24,000 people over what COG projects, which is 30,000 more than we have today.
Correct.
How do you get to the point where you're increasing it by that much
Sure,
that fast?
where we're making that assumption.
Yeah.
So the way that we do it is we take a look at entitled projects. So think of, in your local municipalities, think of your zoning entitlements. We take a look at what's been built under those entitlements and what hasn't. We sort of use that population projection attached to those vacant acres with the underlying assumption of the densities to sort of get to that.
And by entitled, you mean zoned or
Yes, sir.
platted? Or
That's correct. It would be-
what constitutes entitled?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the cities, we're talking about generally a zoning. So think of a planned development district or some other zoning development that we know is going to come through. So we sort of use those data points.
But not just general zoning maps.
That's correct. So
It's got to be as specific to a project.
it's sort of two-pronged. I'll say that it's both. So what I did as part of the process is I take a look at, yes, the projects that the cities have identified for us. That's sort of the low-hanging fruit, right? Because we know, okay, that someone has been in the
Right.
department recently. But what I do is I take a look at vacant acreages and I look at the city's future land use plans and assign, okay, well, we have a large assembly of acreages here that are zoned for residential or for some sort of employment, depending on the metric that we're looking at. We sort of apply those as, okay, it's got this amount of acreages that is out of the floodplain. And so there's a little bit of art to it, probably more art than science, frankly. But we take a look at the future land use plan, we take a look at vacant acreages, and that's how we're sort of identifying the ultimate acreage that is developable.
Okay, and that's the kind of detail, frankly, that we should be looking for in this.
Sure.
It's still, one more question before I
Oh,
make
please.
a comment.
Sure.
So that's in cities. In counties, how do you evaluate it in counties, or do you just go with COG numbers?
No, very good question. So we do not just take the COG number, at face value in the TAZs that are in the unincorporated areas. So we're at an advantage here in Rockwall County. It's a small county. A lot of the county is covered by some sort of municipality or an ETJ with a future land use metric. And the areas that aren't, like in your precinct, Commissioner, specifically, what we've done is we've taken a look at roadway connections, sort of identified those areas as prime for development of some kind in the future. Of course, we're not implying that, it'll be overnight, right? But taking a look at future connections that are planned, okay, we have 200 acres at an intersection of two state, on network systems. We've identified that as planners as prime for some sort of development to potentially occur. And then, of course, you sprinkle in the sort of TCEQ mud list throughout that as well that we have on record to sort of fill in the blanks, because you're right, COG would not have known about a couple muds, for example, years ago when they were doing these projections. But we do. We have the benefit of that.
Okay, but ultimately, you're coming to the conclusion that people will move here faster than the COG data expects they will.
That's correct. So,
And-
go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, the way it's pertinent is, the reason it's pertinent is it's going to help, when we run the model, it'll sort of identify if there are immediate projects that are perhaps more important than what have been previously assumed. So that's why we're sort of taking a look at that growth projection in the entitlement to sort of identify that, maybe it might happen a little quicker, but then we're going to sort of slow down as opposed to that direct ramp up that COG is illustrating.
So, A question too.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead if you're not done.
I'll just finish up here, if you don't mind, Commissioner. Thanks for that insight, and my comment to the court and to anyone listening would be that I'm pretty confident that we're all not happy with these numbers. Let's try and put it that way. Because we'll all remember what it used to be like when we were here. When we moved in, there was this, okay, and we all got our own version of that. But right now, there's 130,286 as of last year. That's going by COG to 169, by our consultants' adjustments, who were paying to do this for us, so who we should respect their opinions, to 193. So in 11 years, they are talking about 40% plus growth in our county is what we're projecting. So my comment to wrap up this little portion is just, if we ever thought we didn't need roads, this just proves we do, and that's why we're doing the study.
Yeah, and I had a very frustrating meeting with TxDOT about roads, which I'll talk about in my commissioner court report later. It's going to make you even more irritated. But my question is, when I'm looking at 2025 base year to the 2036 adjusted, and thank y'all for doing that, these numbers, that's a 45% increase in Rockwall County. But on the TAS, we've only got, if we combine it all, we've only got a 33% increase total. So did we speed up the growth rate on the transportation area zones too? Do we think that number is accurate? I mean, that's a big drop from 45 in Rockwall County to 33 in the zone.
Yeah, it's a good question, Commissioner. So the way that it works for our growth rates, the rates that we use are think of it as a blended rate. There's the data that's coming from the COG, which we generally, we don't want to just say, this is, lousy, right? Like we think that it has credence. We also take a look at some other data sources and try and, objectively determine, do we think that this is reasonable? So what I want to say is if it's valuable to any of you, if we need to sit down and take a look at a TAZ in your precinct, we're more than happy to do that. We're still in a preliminary state. So if we think that, I don't know, based off of your sort of eyes on the ground, that the rate might not be as aggressive in this area for this reason, we're more than happy to tweak the metric for that cell. Really, all this is a giant Excel sheet with all of our TAZs, with lots of base year data and things like that. So we can manipulate it, and if we think that that's more valuable in terms of accuracy, we're more than happy to do that.
And then once we agree on this data set,
Right.
is this something that COG would ever take a look at and adopt and move their numbers with?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I know that sometimes they can be a little averse to just accepting that. Because yeah, go ahead, Brian. Brian's probably better answer that.
I worked at COG for about 7 years or 5 years or whatever. Generally speaking, COG is given an allocation by the Texas demographer that they have to work with, and they have to allocate that growth throughout the region. So the benefit with the Thoroughfare plan is you're not constrained by that. So we can go and look at these deeper dives, and we're not constrained by that allocation. COG will sometimes look at it if they see something unique or interesting, but again, it always falls back to that they would just have to reallocate whatever growth they've designed to the area and maybe shift it between TAZs. But they do tend to keep it separate from their other study because RIS is a separate department within the transportation group.
And to what Commissioner Galana was, I think, kind of getting to is looking at the buffer zone. Two of the big high growth areas abut me, which would be Hunt County and Josephine. And your model looks like there, Rockwall grows and then levels off, and then the surrounding areas grow faster when we level off. I just don't believe that.
Okay.
What I'm seeing is explosion of growth to my north and to my east that isn't in a city, and I just think it's being missed. And I want to meet with you and figure out how you came up with that TA zone around me.
Sure.
Because that's not what I'm seeing.
Okay. Yeah, and this is excellent. This is part of the reason that I wanted to give this little spiel was to solicit that. If you think, we have local knowledge, which is nice, but you have probably the most intimate local knowledge.
And so item 16 is FM 1777 extension. According to the last COG numbers, which are lower than what you're projecting, that road that we're looking at building is going to have more traffic than the outer loop on that segment of road.
Yeah, that's exactly my point with the line of questioning, is that I think it's going to really affect some of our planning data and what is going to be a priority and what's not moving forward.
Yeah, well, and as Commissioner Stacy mentioned, he is surrounded by two areas to the north and to the east. I'm
Right.
surrounded by two areas to the east and to the south, which are growing, exploding at exploding pace. And again, I appreciate you digging into the data and looking at it. I'll be happy to talk to you about that.
Sure.
This is critical, but the point I see from all this is, unless we can figure out a way, and unless Judge New can figure out a way to build a toll bridge on 4 sides of our county, they're coming. So we better build our roads, and we gotta be all working toward this, and it's just further emphasis on that.
Sure. And like I said, if we need to sit down, I'm more than happy to do so. In fact, I think it'd be very valuable if we all, got on a call per precinct and make sure that we're seeing the right things, that you're seeing what you'd like to see in the data.
If you could send me kind of what you're looking at
Sure.
and explain it to me and give me about a week to digest it, then I'd like to meet with you, in the next 2 or 3 weeks and
Sure.
just walk through it.
Sounds great.
I'll have one more kind of nitpicky question. It's about
sure.
a survey question that I don't like. I've already told Commissioner Macklick I don't like it. Question 6, that talks about all these different modes of transportation that just aren't something that the community wants in Rockwall. There's not a none to check on. I've had several constituents call me and say, I don't want regional transportation through Rockwall County. I don't want none of the options, but there's no way to select none of the options. And I just don't want something to influence our thoroughfare plan.
Sure.
I don't want you to think that we want a train coming through here, and so that's going to influence to 2050 how we can build roads, okay? So
Understood.
that question seems like it's maybe fit for another community and not really in line with what Rockwall County residents want. So it's a little concerned about that line of questioning.
Sure.
I've had, while Brian comes up, I've had similar conversations of, it feels like you're forcing me to select something that I never would select.
Ron and I discussed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been very clear when we looked at the data and we understand talking to the commissioners, we are a very auto-oriented community. And that is not going to change. The idea is that at some point, there might be other conversations. We understand that those conversations are not imminent. It's just about testing the water to see what's there. But that's probably as far as it's going to go. I don't think we're going to have a big markup on all these other ideas. We may talk we'll have another discussion with the court about, is there a conversation to be had in 10 or 15 or 20 years about some of these things? But I don't think in the near term, there's just other issues that are more important at this time. But Mr. Glenn, I definitely will keep your comments in future. And we will try, when we look at the survey results, I'll make sure that our team does treat those kind of comments with a certain amount of levity.
How hard would it be for you to read question 6 right now?
I don't have the survey on me
Does
right
anybody?
now.
Well, and while you're
Yes,
coming up,
I should, that's a good point.
to Commissioner Galana's point, if there's not a none and you wouldn't select a none, N-O-N-E, obviously, we're not attacking the Catholic Church here.
Okay, thank
If
you.
there's not a none selection today, it feels a little bit like you're being forced to answer a question, and I want to just make sure, as I think Commissioner Galana as well, that we don't, at some point in the future, look back and say, hey, 43% of the people want a light rail solution, when if we gave them a none, you would see that number go down to virtually zero.
One thing that we will probably do is say how many people did not answer the question at all. And that's what I would do, is say what people were non-responsive to the question, say, I don't like any of the answers, I'm not.
So does the survey allow you to skip a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Most people aren't going to do that. They're not going to skip the question. They're going to feel like they have to pick something,
Yeah.
and they're going to pick
But
something.
we can treat that question kind of in a separate
will say too, it was edited to add other so that people can select, if they don't agree with the question, they can select other and then they can, specify why.
Are you going to read the question?
All that build up and then no question. Yeah.
Sorry. So that, question number 6 reads, which 3 options would you like to see Rockwall County explore in the future to reduce driving trips? And they can select up to 3. Regional transit service with park and ride locations, biking micromobility options, i.e. scooters, electric bike rentals, etc. On-demand transit, microtransit, i.e. vans and shuttles, remote hybrid work or school schedules, carpooling, ride-sharing options, walking, and then other, and then they have the opportunity to specify other if they don't like the question.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. First of all, I have no problem with you including none. I thought this had been resolved. I've been contacted, as Judge New and as Commissioner Galana have, by people, some of whom are not in my precinct, some of whom are, about this question, and I've tried to respond to everyone that has. I thought this had been dealt with by adding the other. I look at it a little bit differently. If you say, which 3 would you like to do to reduce traffic? If you say none, that means you don't want to do anything to reduce traffic, the way I read it. So put none in there, because I'd like to know how many people don't want to reduce traffic. I think it'd be very informative. Other was put in there as seriously as an attempt to try and deal with this concern that people had raised, because we try to be very responsive to people when they say, hey, you can do things better or you can make it clearer. We tried to do that. So we did edit the question to include the other and give them the idea to respond. We allowed them to skip it. But if there are people that don't want to do things to reduce traffic, please add none. Please do it today.
Sure.
And I'm 100% in agreement with Commissioner Galana on that.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at our options now that it's live, see how we can potentially tweak that. And to reiterate what Brian was saying as well, the good thing about this exercise, message received very loud and clear, right, in terms of things being interpreted. The good thing is ultimately it's going to be the steering committee and the court who gets to sort of review the data set in front of them and make the ultimate.
Discard a question.
Yeah, I would
leave that
maybe
up to you.
just suggest that I don't think anybody here doesn't want to do anything to reduce traffic. I think we all hate traffic, but I think you can add a line that just says none of the above. And then you could leave other so that people could still give you an open-ended idea if they want to. Just put none of the above, because I don't think anybody wants a DART park and ride here. I don't know how remote hybrid work schedules are going to be done through a commissioner's court action. Biking, and nobody wants electric scooters here, right? Carpool and rideshare, I don't think that's the job of government. On-demand transit, vans and shuttles, we have Star Transit for those needs right now. And I don't have a clue what walking means. I mean, I know what walking is, but what does that have to do with the plan? So I'm just trying to point out the obvious. Just put none of the above. I don't know how you're going to go back now, and I don't know how much longer the survey is going to be open. So I don't know how much this is even going to do. But that's just what my people are asking for.
Sure. Yeah, Commissioner heard loud and clear.
Let's do it, because we are going to be at Farmers Market starting this Saturday and the following Saturday.
Yeah.
So I hope to have some more additions to
Sure.
the survey.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get to work on that, Commissioner.
Commissioner Galana, what does "is" mean?
Nope.
Yes.
Stay focused. Carry on with your presentation, please.
Sorry, I'm hijacking it. Just one point of clarity, that question does have to be answered. You can't submit your survey without answering the question.
Change it so they don't have to answer it, if you would,
Yeah,
please.
we'll do. We'll take a look at that too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Well, that's it for my demographics slide. I had a feeling you were going to have some comments and questions, so I'll turn it back to Brian.
Yeah, just wanted to add one point that with remote work, that is becoming the next most dominant mode of transit is that people will work remotely from home, and that removes trips. So that's one reason why we did have it in the questionnaire, because most counties we're seeing now, up to 10% of trips can be remote work. They just don't have to travel. So it's useful to developing policies to encourage developers to have, you know, an option in their development plan for a home office, and that's about as far as we can go. But anyways, next steps are to close and update the survey. We'll fix that question as soon as possible when we get back to the office. Complete the issues and needs identification and summary, and then we're going to use that to help mark up the existing thoroughfare plan and start working on some policies. We're going to take all the proposed projects. We're going to be updating the network models. We should have all that done by the end of this week, and then continue to work on the report development. And that's all I have. If there are any other questions?
Questions for Brian?
I don't have a question for you, Brian. I appreciate the update. And Eric, I appreciate all your hard work getting ready for the update, because I know you're involved in that, so thank you so much. I would just want to remind everybody and our legal counsel that one major portion of this that's not discussed is our apportionment planning. And so I don't know if you all have any questions about that, but I know we're looking to some input from your team over there. So that's a big part of what we're doing here also.
Eddie's here to answer any questions on the apportionment, if there are any.
Well, I can certainly give an update. We have met with the legal counsel, and we reviewed the methodological approach, kind of a technical approach of how apportionment would be measured, and so we're really waiting on feedback. They've had a few weeks now, they're looking at it, so we're hoping to get some feedback soon on if there's any concerns with regards to the technical approach.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Commissioner Lichty is correct. That is one of the big goals we want to achieve with this Thoroughfare plan update. Any other questions for Brian?
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.